Stephen Gorton is the director of Original Vision, an award-winning architecture and design studio with over 30 years of presence in Asia and more than 60 international design awards. His firm is behind some of the region's most iconic hotels and private residences, from Phuket to Hong Kong and China to the Caribbean and beyond. In Phuket specifically, in terms of hotels, you've been involved with Kata Rocks, the Hyatt, the Dream Hotel, amongst others, and you're also involved in the original master planning of Aquella. And private residences in Phuket, you're almost as well known for those as you are for the hotels that you've done. But Samsara Estate, which is iconic on Millionaire's Mile, lots of people will know that. A large villa on the headland in Cape Yamu, again iconic. Villa Amanzi, luxury villas, several luxury villas on the beach in Natai, amongst other villas. There are actually quite a few. It's a pleasure to catch up with you. Thank you for your time today, and welcome to the Pulse of Phuket.
Thank you.
Looking through, knowing you over the years that I have and knowing your projects fairly well, I would say that it seems as if you have a kind of a contemporary approach to tropical architecture. You say that very much yourselves. What's your kind of vision, and what's the kind of philosophy there?
It's sort of pushing the envelope, really, pushing the boundaries, seeing what you can do better. You know, as a professional, you know, running the office, the design office. What we're able to do here versus what we would be able to do in the UK or other countries is chalk and cheese. So that's why I actually enjoy practicing here, because we can do interesting and different things. We are not over-regulated. The key with tropical architecture is the environment where you are building. I don't mean using environmentally sensitive stuff. Yes, that comes into play, but it's actually, we are here, we're in the tropics, it pours down with rain, or the sun's shining so much, you need to get out of the elements. But also in a very simple way. When you look at the old buildings, you look at, dare I say these days, colonial buildings, they understood the climate, the environment, down to the absolute microclimate, you know, how things worked, how your front entrance worked, and you know, using ponds outside for cooling and you know, passive ventilation. It's all important stuff. And now with, you know, energy becoming more expensive, it's as important as anything. Solar panels are becoming much more commonplace now, but you still start off with the basic fundamentals of passive influences on the designs, you know, the ventilation, climate control, you know, having low eaves that come down to the outside so you're not burning in the sun all the time, shade, you know, how you shed the water away from the buildings, all those things, still there. They don't go away. And, you know, we try to put a modern, if you will, interpretation, or take a modern approach to that, you know. So that's what we try and do. Maybe slightly different materials, slightly different proportions. The use of the buildings is much different from what it used to be 100 years ago, 200 years ago. So we have to allow for that with hotels and things which weren't around in those days, not in the same way. So yes, it's just about melding what's required with what you have and putting the two together. It's nice. It's a challenge. You know, it's good. It's nice to do that. And to see a successful product at the end of the day is great. You know.
You describing that, I mean, I know Samsara very well. I'm just picturing Samsara in my mind when you're talking about the airflow and the eaves that have come down. That was an iconic project. Well, it is an iconic project. And even now, there's lots of resales there. I mean, it was built how many years ago?
Or 18, 19 years ago.
But even now, I mean, I would say it's a timeless, modern, contemporary design. It looks as modern now as it did 18 years ago, and certainly the interest in it from buyers, which we see, and the desire is still there in the market.
Right.
Tell us about Samsara. How did the project come about? How did you get involved, and what was your kind of design remit?
Samsara brought us here, brought us to Phuket.
Okay.
We had done work elsewhere in Asia, obviously with the Hong Kong office. So we'd done some work in Vietnam, we'd done some work in Cambodia. But the client was quite friendly with Adrian, who knew him from historically from before, and said that and he had already done some developments here in Phuket, and he said that he wanted to do something just because of the land was quite spectacular, waterfront on all sides, and has views and different aspects to it. So he wanted something that really, I wouldn't say fitted in, but the way we looked at it was grow from the landscape. So whilst the building forms are very simple, the actual spaces, when you go into the communication routes and everything within the buildings, are quite complex, actually. But what we did was we chose a very simple palette of materials, not over the top, just simple, which was sharper and cleaner generally than was being done at the time. And at that time, a lot of people were very interested in the, well, let's call it Thai style, but the what I would call pseudo Thai style, because that's what they were being offered. They weren't being offered anything else, and then bang, all of a sudden, this came about, and it did very well. I mean, look, there was a lot of sales were done off plan, but at that time, it was an expensive project.
Groundbreaking at the time in terms of a design.
Yeah, I think so. And again, we won awards for it, best architecture in Thailand and back in 2003, 4, something like that.
Samsara is part of that Millionaire's Mile on the Kamilar headland, where it really forms that sort of cluster of super villas on the west coast. And of course, people coming here on holiday, there's always that sect of people, or the top end, that are looking for where's the super villas, and being so close to all the beach clubs and everything. And next for you, or the next major project after that, was Kata Rocks. I think if people aren't involved in real estate here, or looked around or stayed in one of these luxury villas, don't know Millionaire's Mile, I think Kata Rocks would be the standout hotel. I mean, it's one of the most recognised five-star hotels in Phuket.
Right. And it's been well managed as well. And, our client, Richard, he's been involved all the way through it until today. A bit like a number of the sites that we've had, very interesting site, with all the rocks and the boulders, and right there on the waterfront as well, down in Kata.
In terms of the design, I know you mentioned you had challenges with the rocks on the land, and you had to get a certain, you had to position the unit, the buildings in a certain way. Tell us a little bit about all of that.
That was tricky. There's not a lot of room for maneuver. We had some, very good engineers who were able to help us to straddle the rocks, or to touch things minimally, if you will, the ground.
You look at them from the sky; they actually look like boats. The way that it's. But
that was an intent. The nautical, shall we say, design?
Nautical.
Yeah. You look at the sides and the way that the windows sweep around and that sort of thing. So it was a deliberate influence.
Okay.
And being there on the rocks as well. And the client, the developer, is still a very keen sailor. They host the King's Cup every year here for sailing and that sort of thing. So, it all works nicely together.
Moving back to private residences, I mean, on the headland in Cape Yamu, and you actually were involved in building Villa Maria.
Yep. We did 2 villas there. The 2 villas that are there now. Villa Maria was the first, and I think it was a very interesting villa. We often say, it takes 2 to tango, sometimes 3, but basically we produce the goods and the product at the end of the day, but it's always a reflection of the client. Be it Kata Rocks, or we've talked about others, Samsara, whatever it is a product of the client, but also the site, the location. So, and that particular client wanted a voyage of discovery through his villa. He didn't want every room. He wanted to have something different view, different atmosphere, different feel. But he still wanted something simple, neat, modern, and that's him as well as just the way that he is. And so I think that's what we did, and I actually do very much like it still as a good example of a villa. I believe that quite a few of the people who've stayed there, whether they be guests or paying people who've gone to stay there, actually respond to that very well. And just having that as part of the brief was great, because it led us in all different directions. You have little courtyards that you don't expect to see and just pop out of nowhere. They also provide ventilation through the villa, when it's opened up and that sort of thing. So again, in its environment, in its location, and again, as an interpretation of tropical design, I think it's worked very well. There's a lot of glass in the villa, but there's also a lot of shade around it. It seems to have gone down very well.
Certainly I went there when the construction was nearly done. You certainly, right from the entrance, you can see that it's an original vision design.
Can you?
I think it's your entranceway and the stone.
Yeah, probably.
You have certain signatures throughout your properties.
Right.
But what struck me was just the volume of it and the scale of it, and just the views are just breathtaking.
They are. Well, it's a funny one, isn't it? For me, in Phuket, as we talk about Phuket specifically, the East Coast, I do not understand why the East Coast doesn't have more appeal to people. You look at the views on Phang Nga Bay, and every morning you wake up and it's a different view, because the light's different, it's raining or it's not, or the clouds and this, that, and the other. In the evening when the sun's going down, of course, it comes from the other side of the island, from the west side. But the way that the sun shines on the casks, in the water and on Phang Nga Bay, it's just stunning. It's like watching a moving painting, every day is different. I think that's fantastic. A lot of people do seem to want sunset. They want the West Coast. They want to have a villa that has sunset. Fine. Gets hot.
Yes. And you got that sun shining in your property.
Yeah.
From 4 or 5 p.m. onwards. Maybe
for a couple of hours a day. It gets bloody hot.
It does.
Whereas on the East Coast, it's quieter. It's not so sophisticated on that side of the island, in a sense. And maybe that's also part of its charm and appeal. I think real estate, unfortunately, doesn't do very well on the East Coast. And it's a pity, really, because it's got a lot of things going for it. No, I think it's an overused term, but like it's sort of hidden gem. It's there and everybody knows it, but nobody's prepared to tackle it in a sense, or make the most of it.
Yeah.
And if you've got kids, say, at BIS or one of the local schools or wherever it is, it's not that far.
No,
it really isn't. And the other positive thing, especially with the new road that's been put in all the way from the Heron's Monument around to, and it's still going in up towards the airport there. Well, anybody who's traveling, you would go that way, wouldn't you, really? You're not far from the airport.
Yeah,
really.
Yes.
So, new boomerang routes going in and all sorts of stuff. So I hope that it will spur more interest on the East Coast then, but we'll see.
What about the cost roughly per square meter of building a luxury villa?
How luxury do you want to get?
Top end or close to the top end? Like,
yeah,
someone was building a Samsara now, or a villa Amanzi, or
yeah, we do. Amanzi was an interesting one. I mean, that broke quite a lot of new ground as well for us and the island, I think. But costs have fluctuated quite a bit post-COVID. You mentioned earlier Villa Maria. That was built during COVID. And so we had logistical problems of getting materials and finding the labor and various other things. Okay, that's all gone. We've now got almost the other. We've got oversupply of contractors. But the costs certainly, they haven't gone down. They've gone up. They keep going up. And that's an international thing. But I think, where would you go? You can build, for example, I would say, low to mid-range for about 35,000 baht square meter.
Which is about $1,000 per square meter.
Yeah. That's not all singing, dancing, lots of technology and stuff. That's basic and straightforward. And of course, the more you put into that, so for example, if you were doing condominiums, then yeah, you can build those for 35,000 because you've got more of them. You know, it just spreads the cost. Whereas if you're doing one-off villas, then you know you really need to be starting at about 55,000 a square meter now for a private villa, a one-off, and up to we costed some. I hate to say it, but this is about 8 years ago. We did an analysis of a project that was finished, and that was 85,000 a square meter, and that was 8 years ago.
Okay.
So, you know, it does vary a bit, and costs actually can be controlled now more.
Yeah.
Whether clients or developers buy direct rather than buying through the contractor, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot more sophistication in the management of the project now than there was 10 years ago, and even 20 years ago. So that
can help to reduce costs.
It can. No, it does. Definitely does. Definitely does. Especially with the bigger projects. I mean, in the old days, of course, the architects were the project manager. I mean, there wasn't a project manager. You know, it was all left up to the architect to coordinate everything and everybody. But as projects became more sophisticated and larger, that's the dull and boring bit somebody else can do. So, you know, it's so, you know, we stick with the design. We like to be involved in the process. We like to be involved definitely with the client and the other consultants in producing the end product, whatever that is. Yeah, it's interesting. It's challenging. You know, I mean, life would be boring without all this stuff. We do a lot of work with foundations and charities. So it's not all about earning lots of fees. It's actually about giving back. So it's one thing to be, you know, designing big hotels and nice big villas, but at the same time, we do a lot of work with Soy Dog, for example, and other animal sanctuaries around the world. In India, we're doing a project in India now, big project, very interesting, very, you know, it's an incredible jigsaw, but such a challenge, you know, and it's just wonderful to have, to be able to do those projects. You know, it's not all about we're producing, you know, skyscrapers and, you know, big buildings. No, you can do things that are appreciated by many, many more people than just a glass skyscraper. You know, it's and I think that's a reward in itself. It's nice to do that. It takes a lot of hard work to do it, but at the end of the day, no, it's worthwhile, in my opinion. Education as well. We're doing a number of schools, and again, I see that as giving to the next generation. You know, providing them with it doesn't matter what it is, accommodation, etc. We're not teachers, but we do take in interns into the office, whether they be, you know, university students or whether they be school students. They just want, oh, what's it like being an architect? You know, can I come and see you for a week? Yeah, come in. You know, so we do a lot of that side of things as well.
And mentoring students.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's so important. I think, you know, those being able to, you know, I see it as giving back, being able to give, for example, whether it's my children or other people's children, opportunities, which, okay, the education establishment said, okay, we need more, whatever it is. Great, let me design it, because, you know, we can maybe introduce some new ideas, some new concepts, discuss it with the schools, and there's some really good schools out there being designed. You know, very interesting stuff, which is really good for the, you know, children's education. I think that's so important. So, you know, leaving something for the next generation, if you, in a sense, either a building that they've grown up in, or something that, you know, is going to last for couple of hundred years is.
Apart from possible development of more on the East Coast in the future, is there anything else do you see coming up for Phuket in the future? How do you think things are going to develop on the island?
I have mixed feelings. I mean, obviously, I'm in the business of development, and whatever project we take on, we try to be as sensitive as we can with with the response to wherever it is, a flat site or a sloping site, east coast, west, it doesn't really matter. We try to be as sensitive as we can for the users, but also, literally the site itself. I must admit, I'm a little concerned about the environmental implications of building above 80 meters now. I don't think it's necessary. I understand, the politics and finances behind it. I understand all that. But there's so much land on Phuket that can still be developed and nicely developed. And I just hope that doesn't ruin the environment on the upper slopes, because they're very sensitive. If you look at landslips now, if you look back at the hillsides now, with the landslips that we've had over the years, it's all up there. And as soon as we start cutting down all the trees, cutting roads and things, it's just going to get worse and worse. So it does need to be controlled to some extent, the development.
I think some people watching this will be either living in Phuket or have been frequent visitors to Phuket, will know Kata Rocks or may be familiar with your designs and be interested to listen to someone that's been living here a long time and your opinions on the island.
Well, if I didn't like living here, I wouldn't be here. Well, I've been 22 years now, and it's home as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Would I go back to live in England? No. I don't understand why anybody does. Well, I do. I go and visit and it's fine, but I'm glad to get back. As a professional, running the office, the design office, what we are able to do here, I mentioned right at the beginning on one of the projects, is pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelope, if you, in a sense. What we're able to do here versus what we would be able to do in the UK or other countries is chalk and cheese. So that's why I actually enjoy practicing here, because we can do interesting and different things. We are not over-regulated, so it really is. I feel very lucky to have been able to do that. By being here.
If someone wanted to contact you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Give me a call.
Give me a call.
Give me a call. WhatsApp. Okay. WhatsApp works well. I've got Stephen at original-vision.com email.
Okay.
Stephen.
Your website is
original-vision.com.
Okay. We'll put the links in the description below, so anyone watching this and wants to get in touch with you, they can just click those links. Sure. And they can come through to you.
Yeah.